Today's episode is brought to you by our local sponsor, Banshee Bay Wedding Spirit and Event DJ Services. Thank you so much for your support.
Welcome to Ask a Witch, a podcast fueled by the curiosity of listeners like you. Join our host as she discusses various aspects of witchcraft and spirituality with intellectual and authentic members of the metaphysical community. This podcast is made possible by Blessed Bee Tea and Apothecary, a one-stop witch shop nestled in downtown Traverse City, Michigan. And now your host, the bewitching Bellamy Black.
Hello and welcome to Ask a Witch. I'm Bellamy Black. In this podcast, we discuss a variety of questions sent in by listeners like you. With me today is my special guest, Lorene Music. She is a diviner, a tarot reader, and a dear friend. Lorene, I'm so happy to have you on the podcast.
I'm thrilled to be here.
I hope that this is one of multiple episodes that I have with you. I think you have a variety of areas that you are well versed in that I'd like to talk about at different given points. So get used to Lorene being here because we talk a lot.
And dress alike.
And dress alike, apparently, which is awesome. For those on the podcast, we are both showed up today in black and red outfits, both in skirts, both in Doc Marten boots, and it's pretty awesome. We didn't even call each other.
No.
I love it. Just like besties. It's
Total
like
psychic connection.
It's like you were psychic. Yeah. It's like you had this psychic connection. I love that.
It's true.
Proving your skills
My
right here, your abilities.
Right from the get-go. Sorry.
Before we get into our listener question and before we start chatting, I want to talk to you about our tea of the day today. Today we are drinking tarot tea, which I thought was fitting. Right?
It is.
So it makes
Absolutely.
perfect sense. And this is one of Blessed Bee Tea's proprietary blends. And the intention behind this tea is to help with meditation and divination. I mean, this tea is good on a Tuesday. You can drink it any day, and it happens to be Tuesday today. But the intention behind it was to drink it when you have like maybe ritual or ceremony that you're gonna participate in or work through. It's good for meditation. It's good for if you're trying to do some lucid dreaming or some astral projection. It's really good for like opening up that third eye. It is a orange and tulsi base, which is a little bit grounding and a little bit fruity, which is a nice little counter. It is spiced with cinnamon and clove and allspice. And then we brought in this like kind of flora and forest aspect by bringing in hibiscus and meadowsweet, which meadowsweet just smells like walking through the forest on a hot day. And it is one of my favorite smells and tastes ever. And then the secret ingredient in it is mugwort. And so the mugwort in there is a sacred plant. It's a sacred medicine, and it's used to help open up your third eye. It's used to help with divination, tarot, meditation, all those things. So I suggest that people drink it in ceremony rather than just drinking it on a Tuesday. Although, like I said, it's really good at any time of the day, but it's really good if you sit down and consume it as if you're like consuming a potion that's going to help you open your third eye and help with divination. So let these sacred plants help you on your path. And that's a lot of what I think tea does for people anyway, without them really realizing it.
It's pretty potent, if I might add.
Yeah.
It is.
Good.
It is. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I think we need that. I think we need the little training wheels on our brains sometimes.
It's very true.
Especially when we're overstimulated
Yes.
and trying to work through different practices that you have to be mindful and sit down and be still for. And that's really hard sometimes.
It is hard to get out of our own way.
Yes.
Out of the mind and into that kind of creative, intuitive body space.
Yeah, that's a perfect way of putting it, is getting out of our own way. And so this kind of helps us jump that hurdle a little bit. But yeah, cheers. Thanks.
Cheers. And this is, can I just tell you, it's post-coffee and I'm feeling pretty mellow.
Good.
So there you go.
That's good.
Yeah.
It's a little balance.
A little balance.
Well, welcome, Lorene. I'd like to get to know my guest a little bit first. So can you tell us a little bit about your history, maybe a little bit about your spiritual journey, what led you to tarot and divination? I'd like to know a little bit more about that.
Sure. So to access the Wayback Machine, um, growing up, my parents had us in a spiritual and religious cult. And so that really shaped how I felt about religion v. spirituality. We also happened to have, it was kind of a new age cult experience. So we had a family psychic. So I've never been afraid of the intuitive piece, despite growing up in a very kind of religious experience, right?
Sure.
So she used to come to our house. I can remember the first reading I really remember very, very clearly. I was 9. And she came in with like she did tea and playing cards. And I just remember being fascinated by her playing cards. And I couldn't understand how she could see what she saw in the cards. And I think the cards for her were just a distraction, but it always felt very magical to me because she would say truths.
Sure.
That didn't always feel very comfortable to me.
Of course.
So it was a very just, I don't know, being intuitive, being psychic, exploring those areas, astrology, numerology, the psychic world was something that was really common to the family. It wasn't shunned, unlike in some perhaps religious circles.
Sure.
It wasn't shunned. It was a way to prove that the cult leader was giving us free will and freedom of expression.
Interesting.
Yes. So she actually had said to my dad, this psychic, Betty, she said to my dad when I was little, she's like, okay, this girl has a gift. I want you to send her to, I think it was Duke University that had a metaphysical arm.
Sure.
She's like, I want you to send her there. That's what she needs to do. That's what she needs to be honed in.
Gotcha.
For sure. Promise me you'll do that. And he's like, okay, she's going to business school.
Got it.
And that's it. So I ended up going to business school because he was not into that at all.
Sure.
Didn't figure that there was any way to make money
Okay.
or do anything with it. So it was like, no, just put that off to the side. And of course, the family eventually pulled away from the cult, or I should say was ostracized from the cult.
Oh.
My father was declared the Antichrist and sent packing. And once he was, then I was in college already at that time. And that's when he called and said, okay, we're not going to be a part of this anymore. And I just felt this incredible sense of relief and freedom and like you can breathe for the first time in your life. And that is when I thought, okay, now I can really start exploring for myself.
Sure.
Because the cult leader was also kind of a mentalist and he could read your mind and read your emotions. And he was really good at that and very manipulative.
Yeah.
So anytime you were in front of him, you'd feel very vulnerable. And so I never felt confident doing anything like that when I was young. But I was bold when I was young and I would pick up a book. I was going to be Wiccan. I was going to read palms. Anything that I could get my hands on, I was going to do. The one thing I never tried was tarot cards until like fast forward to about 2013, I think it was.
Okay.
And I had a girlfriend. I was going through just kind of a spiritual cleanse, finding myself. And my girlfriend said, I'm sending you a gift. I said, great. She sent me this gift. I opened it up and I said, what is this? And she's like, what do you mean? It's tarot cards. I'm like, I don't know tarot cards.
Sure.
I don't know anything about tarot cards.
Yeah.
She goes, sure you do. I said, no, I don't. She goes, just bear with me. She goes, open up the box. Shuffle the cards. She's okay, now just tell me a story. I said, oh, come on. She goes, yes, tell me a story. Tell me a story about my life. What's coming up? I'm like, I don't know. She's like, just do it.
Sure.
So she got me in the practice right then and there of just storytelling by looking at pictures on the cards. And I thought, oh my gosh, this feels approachable to me. Like I can actually do this. And she would call back all the time and be like, oh, you're so accurate. You were spot on. Absolutely.
Interesting.
Yeah. So then I felt like I could.
Yeah.
And that's how I got into tarot. And then I thought, well, in order to actually do it, I probably need to train. Like I want to take it seriously. I'm a real, education is important to me.
Yeah.
Structure, frameworks.
Sure.
Tradition, all really important to me. So I thought, okay, well, I better go and take a course. You'll appreciate I took my first course with Doreen Virtue. Do you know the Doreen Virtue story?
I do not know the Doreen Virtue story.
So a lot of people that were religious Christian were transported into the spirituality world by Doreen Virtue.
Okay.
She came out with the Angel Tarot cards.
Okay.
And she and Radley Valentine, who, by the way, is just a real character and he's a real sweetheart, made it very accessible for people.
Sure.
So she had a little course, and you would pick up the cards and you would read the card phrase on the bottom.
Sure.
And it was real accurate, and she was real loving and whatever.
Yeah.
So she encouraged all of us to say, it's not bad. Nobody's going to hurt you.
Right.
It's okay to have your own conversation with the divine, whatever that means to you and what have you.
Yeah,
And so
melding that world of
Oh my
spirituality
gosh,
with
so
Christianity, and angels are approachable, saints are approachable, right? So
Right. But everything was, up until then, you must have a conduit. You must have a gatekeeper at all times. You do not wield this power on your own. You have somebody that filters it for you, which is, you realize later that that's not true.
sure.
But so introduced through her, she gave it up and went back and became born again Christian
Oh,
and encouraged everybody in her community to burn all of the decks that they had had.
Wow.
Removed her name from everything. Left
Interesting.
Hay House. She was with Hay House.
okay.
Left all the proceeds. Denounced it, and then went on a kind of a tirade back to the church and fear-based, and you've got to get out of this and you can't do this. And I remember feeling very dismantled.
I would imagine so.
Like,
yeah.
oh my gosh, I think,
Yeah, just because she's had this like breakthrough doesn't mean all of her, all of her students, and she's been in this public platform and learning all these different things, and now they're being told that everything they've just devoted their, their studies to and everything is wrong is just, that's very dismantling. That's
it is. It is. And
Absolutely.
it feels like you've been duped and
Yeah.
lied to. And I had another false prophet
Sure.
who told me this was going to be great.
Right.
And then was like, oh my gosh, no, go save your soul.
Yeah.
Instantly. And I will not tell a lie. I questioned it. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to save, I really am. I'm going to have to save my soul. Like,
Yeah.
this is scary.
Oh, of course.
I had no idea, thinking I'm opening a portal to the dark. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the one thing my mom used to always say, don't mess with low-level spirits. Like, okay, I won't. And so in struggling with that, I still had messages for tarot coming in. And like, I want to understand the framework better, because how can I know if it's bad if I really don't know? I went based on what she told me.
Sure.
And that's how I ended up finding a tarot master. Took a tarot class that was, I think it was supposed to be 40 hours of instruction, but I'm sure it was much more like 200, because this guy was
Wow.
really prolific.
Okay. Well, sometimes that can be really nice.
But it was a really good course. I met some really great people. In fact, one of my tarot study buddies, two of them from that course that I took in about, I think, 2014, we still speak every week.
Sure.
And we still expand our learning into not just tarot, but other areas of divination as
Absolutely.
well. And we've been together ever since. And once I learned that and started feeling confident, I thought, oh my gosh, I can actually do this. And so then that was it. Then I was into this deep dive of tarot and divination and spiritual conversations with people. And
Yeah.
I've grown to call it therapy over time, just
Yeah.
because it really is a very therapeutic practice. It's not so much a carnival act
Yeah.
and an entertaining aspect, though there can be entertainment.
Oh, sure.
But and it has fueled my exploration of my own shadows and strengths, and seeing what I couldn't otherwise see, and for the first time feel like I get it. Like, I get how, if you want to call it church, it's right here. It's within us. It's everywhere. It's all
Yeah.
around. And whenever I want to speak, to get out of my own head, other than the tea,
Sure.
I get in my head a lot, and then can pull out the cards, and just it gets out of the mind and back into the body
Sure.
space.
Yeah, I think that tarot is great for helping you to kind of find logic in what your thoughts are, whether they're rational or irrational, and helps you kind of build a like almost like an escape route, or like a kind of like, okay, so this is what I'm thinking right now. I could take this path, or this path, and trying to understand what would work best for you. Tarot cards are really, really good for stuff like that.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know how everybody says, well, just look for the signs, or at least growing up in the church setting, it was like, well, you send up a prayer, and that's
Sure.
what it feels like, right? You send up a prayer
Yep.
and you wait for a sign,
Yep.
right? And so then any feather or anything, it's like, oh my gosh, is that my sign?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of waiting for the divine to answer you, and then the feeling that if you don't get the answer that you want, that it was incorrect or
Sure.
or that your prayers hadn't been answered.
Right.
And I think this helped me to see that it's the same process. It's still sending up the prayer
Right.
intention
Right.
and asking, and then allowing the messages to come through a little bit more quickly, which is nice for me. I'm not very patient.
Absolutely.
And to be able to see it. And certainly we can interpret things incorrectly, but it can be real hard to misinterpret some of the very obvious
Sure.
messaging.
Yeah. Oh, I think like the lifestyle afterwards kind of answers those questions for you too. If you interpret something because that's what you wanted to see, the universe is going to show you what you need to see anyway.
Very true.
What you wanted to see versus what you needed to see. So that's like, yeah, it just kind of happens that way. And that makes you a better reader too, because you're like, actually, I need to put away my ego for what I wanted and say that this is actually what I need. And it helps you work through that.
Yeah.
A little bit.
I
too.
actually have a practice for that. Have
Oh,
I done it
good.
with you?
I don't know. No, I don't think so.
So, and I do. It's great upstairs in your little reading room.
Oh, good.
Because you have a coat rack there.
Yeah.
So, and I do this when I read the Akashics as well. Is I give my ego praise and thanks for being here to protect
Sure.
me, serving a role. And that's
Absolutely.
great. But picture it as like a cloak that I'm wearing.
Okay.
And I always ask to set it aside just for the purpose of the reading.
Mm.
Go hang it up on the coat rack and
Yeah.
promise it. I will pick you up on the way out. I promise you.
Sure.
I'm not leaving without you. But I'd like for you to step aside just for a moment so that I could be more
Yeah.
clear so that I'm not filtering.
Right.
through
Right.
that.
And taking the ego out of it allows the divine or the universe or God or whoever to answer, and you know, through intuition, easier and better and more, and be more precise and more clear in your
It's true.
readings. I love
It's true.
that. Well, Lorene, that's a fascinating story. I mean, I could talk to you about cults all day long. I think that's really it's like, you know, a guilty pleasure of mine is the like I mean, I'm a 30-something person in the Midwest, so of course we love true crime, anything, for whatever sick reason. But yeah, I think that being raised in a very strict mentality about spirituality and religion and what you can do and what you can't do it's very shaping for people. And I think it's, you know, fascinating too that you went through this like kind of awakening once you and your family left that you know, religious restraint, and then found a new teacher and a new diviner who then also left you high and dry. And like, that's just,
Yep.
oh, how frustrating. And I see you being a well-rounded person, and I see that you use tarot as a tool in your everyday life. And I also know you to be a voracious reader, and you are really good at going to school, and you set your own school, and I love that about you too. So with all that, I'd like to read our listener letter.
My lady, a message has arrived for you.
This says, Dear Bellamy Black, it was great meeting you at Blessed Be Tea and Apothecary the other day. While I was there, we got to talking about divination and tarot. While I felt like a lot of my questions were answered, you suggested I write a letter to the podcast so that an expert might weigh in on the topic. So here you go. Sounds a little obligatory, a little like, you told me to write a letter, so here
I am.
Here's the letter. But I'm happy that they did this because their questions are other people's questions.
Yeah.
So I figured it would be a good place to start. So here's their question. It says, I've always felt drawn to practicing divination through tarot card readings, but I am completely overwhelmed, which I get. Do I have to start with a specific kind of deck, like the Rider Waite deck, or can I choose one that has artwork that I like? I hear this one question a lot too. Am I even allowed to buy my own deck, or does it have to be gifted to me? I don't want to be attached to the guidebook that comes with the deck. How can I learn to read fluently without the guide? And what is the difference between oracle decks and tarot decks? Ugh, so many questions. I really could keep going, but I think that's a good start. I can't wait to hear what your expert has to say on the matter. Thank you for taking my many, many questions. Blessed be. Sincerely, training to read tarot in Traverse City.
Love it.
Yeah, this is great. I think this is, like I said, a great start to all the questions that I get hit with in the shop often, and I'm sure, you as a professional tarot reader get hit with these questions often too. So I went through and I kind of like highlighted exactly what her questions were. And I think we should just like kind of start at the beginning here,
Great.
and then we'll jump around if we need to. But I love this first statement that I am completely overwhelmed when it comes to tarot and divination. So can you weigh in on that a little bit? I know it's a lot. There's how many cards in a tarot deck?
78.
And there's major and minor arcana. So, and every single card means something different, and every single card has different artwork. And, that's a lot. That's a lot to memorize. I can't even memorize my lines for the show. So,
Right. And if you get someone who wants to encourage you to read reversals, meaning cards upside down,
right?
now you have 156 meanings.
Yeah. See, yeah,
Right?
overwhelmed.
And then
Completely overwhelmed.
there's a community in tarot as well that has its own kind of rules and its own cult-like behaviors. I'm not going to
Sure.
lie, right? So that when you're first approached, kind of the first thing we tend to see is all of the rules.
Yeah.
And all of the musts and have-tos and how-tos and what have you.
Right.
And so like many people, either you pick up a tarot deck and you look at it and you go, I recall seeing these on TV, but I don't know what to do with it.
Right.
So I put it on a shelf. Or I pick up a tarot deck and a book and I start reading, and then I start memorizing keywords.
Yeah.
And if there's 10 keywords for every card and la.
Yeah.
78, and what do they all mean? It is completely overwhelming.
Yeah.
It really, really is. Which is actually, it's kind of one of the reasons that I pulled back after I went to courses on tarot and learned everything. I thought, oh my gosh, would someone please just have taught me how to do this intuitively first?
Sure.
We can always layer. We can always add meaning.
Yeah.
But there is trust and faith that your higher self, your divine channel, will meet you exactly where you are. You don't have to be further. You don't have to know all the things to use tarot.
Sure.
So as soon as we...
Wait, what?
Wait, what?
So, that was something that you're the first person who gave you a deck. That's something that they had you do, is to
That's
read
right.
intuitively. They
Yes.
didn't. Did you get a guidebook with your first deck?
Yes, there was, which I purchased later.
Sure.
The Angel Tarot by Doreen Virtue was my first deck.
Oh, okay.
So when I picked it up, there were actually phrases on there.
Sure.
And literally what I did was pick it up and read the phrase.
Yeah.
Pick it up and read the phrase. I will say that the artwork on that particular deck was very confusing to me.
Okay.
And didn't really mean anything, but I could read a phrase. So it felt more like, and I know you have this question coming up as well, but it felt more like an oracle deck than it did a structured tarot deck like we're familiar with seeing.
Sure.
Like the Rider Waite stuff.
Right, right.
But yeah, dealing with overwhelm is first things first. If you're called to tarot, it's because tarot is called to you.
Sure.
So you're absolutely worthy, capable.
Yeah.
We all have this innate inner GPS system called our intuition. It comes to all of us very differently.
Sure.
But
That's a good point.
the way to not be overwhelmed is to realize that when we join this earth, we speak in symbols, colors, right? So think about going to a foreign country. If you go to a foreign country and you see, a red stop sign, even if you don't recognize the lettering,
Yeah.
you understand halt.
Yeah.
Or you see green and you feel like go.
Yeah.
Arrows that point any particular direction
Sure.
and you know, right?
Yep.
That's just symbols. And you didn't have to know the language to be there.
Right.
So if you approach tarot the same way
Yeah.
and say, all I'm doing is looking at beautiful images on cardstock. That's all it is just pictures. It's like reading a comic book.
Sure.
Every one of those has symbols for you. So if you're willing to sit with it and just experience the symbols, maybe there are birds.
Yeah.
Maybe it's blue. Maybe it's gray skies. Maybe
Yeah.
there's a sword.
Sure.
If you just sit with it and you recognize the symbols, you all understand that your intuition is speaking to you the same way it was when you were just a baby and didn't understand the English language. So our intuition is automatically interpreting it for us. We
Yeah.
just let our ego get in the way.
Yeah.
We let our
Well,
mind
I
get in
think,
the way.
it's in, I think a guidebook is, and so this kind of goes into the questioner's like, I don't want to be attached to my guidebook that comes to the deck. And how can I read fluently without the guidebook? And I think that starting intuitively is such a good good place to begin because you become comfortable with your cards. So would you suggest like if somebody gets a card to like really flip through them and kind of like look through the cards and become familiar with the cards, or do you just like go in blind and kind of
I think that's such a personal preference.
sure.
I'm an art buff.
Yeah.
So I want to, like, when I pick something, I want to see all the pictures.
Yeah.
Like, I want to look at them.
Yeah. Same.
And so, and each one evokes emotion, or it's a pass in the moment. You never know what's going to draw you in and what's not. So rarely do I get a deck and not at least superficially look through it, because each deck has its own language and there was a reason that you're drawn to it, right?
Right.
And then you just kind of get a sense of what kind of readings, what kind of messages am I going to have from this? What kind of relationship am I going to have with you?
Sure.
Just by like little first date moment.
Yeah.
Right? Let's have a little tarot tea
Yeah.
and let's just see.
Yeah.
Let's just see what kind of language we're going to have.
Well, I think that's an important first step for a tarot deck too. I tell people, and I'm not a professional tarot reader. I read for fun, but I don't charge for it. And I think a lot of people are in that boat where they're like, I like doing it. I feel like I have the intuition. I feel like when I read the cards, the people that I'm reading for are always like, that's it. Like, you got it. And maybe I don't know them that well. And so maybe and that's even more rewarding when I don't know them that well and they're like, you got it, spot on. Like, that's totally it. So I feel like I have the intuition. I feel like that's there.
Yeah.
But I think that, like we were talking about, tarot is a tool, right? And so when I get a new tool in witchcraft or in my practice, I like to kind of make a connection or build a bond with that tool, because it's mine now. And so my energy and my frequency is different than the store that I got it from or the other 20 people that picked it up before I did, and so I like to cleanse my tool, and in whatever way that works for people. Some people sage, some people put it in the full moon, some people do all kinds of different things. But I like to go through the deck and go through every single card and kind of, like feel the energy from the cards and see like how the images resonate with me. And I do pick my decks based off of artwork that I like. There's so many really great artists out there making really awesome decks, yourself included. I know that you've designed quite a few different decks and they're really awesome.
Thank you.
And you have an Etsy, don't you? So
I do.
Divination Apothecary, right, on Etsy. And so we'll list that in the show notes as well. And you can also buy her decks here at Blessed BT. But they're just so creative and so fun. And so we'll talk about that a second too, and how putting your own spin on traditional artwork is like what the pros and cons are of that, or some like challenges that you faced with that. But we'll talk about that in just a second here. I think this is a good place to kind of talk about too, like, how do you get your first deck? So yours was gifted to you.
It was. Ironically, mine was actually gifted to me. And there is a myth or a rule, right?
Yes, another rule.
Another rule that you can't read tarot unless a deck is gifted to you.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just bust that myth right now. There used to be secret societies. There's still secret societies that wanted to gatekeep, not unlike religion.
Sure.
I want you to speak to a priest to get this, or to stand in the way of you having a divine conversation.
Yeah.
And in some ways, I could really understand somebody saying, I have reverence for this tool. There's a tradition to this tool. I want you to appreciate that. Therefore, I don't want you going in and dabbling in this practice unless you are gifted something. So it used to come like through the lineage, or someone who was chosen to be an apprentice or what have you. And then that's how they would then reveal the secrets to you over time. We are way, way past that now. We're much more individualistic. We are much more differentiated. We are much more empowered.
Sure.
And we don't want or need a gatekeeper for our divine channel.
Right.
So it's really a matter of, if you're called to it, go get it. There really is nothing better than the first time you choose your own deck.
I agree.
Right? I mean, you just, like, this is interesting. It's called to me for some reason. And it's because of your language of symbology that you already have within you.
Right.
It's like, hello, check this out. I think we'd speak well together, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes we realize that the ego got in the way and we don't speak so well,
Sure.
right? So I think one of the questions you asked was about a Rider Waite deck. I mean, I think absolutely choose, if you want to, choose whatever deck you love, because ultimately the only way to build the intuitive channel and to learn to read tarot is to practice reading tarot, and you've got to read them all the time. If you're going to read images that you don't enjoy, you're not going to do it.
Right.
But I would say also get a Rider Waite Smith deck, only because in 1909, an occult practice at the Golden Dawn was to create a tarot, right? So we had Arthur Edward Waite, and he was in this occult with Pamela Coleman Smith, and he commissioned her to create tarot for him, which he was doing as part of his process. So you had to understand. So that was, secretive and what have you.
Sure.
Up until that time, all we saw in tarot history was not unlike playing cards, where you would have 6 coins on a card or 4 swords on a card. And then the major arcana was illustrated. You would see the Pope and the Popess. And it was all religious symbology, by the way. Lots of Christianity in tarot. Interesting, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Lots of Christianity. But it would require a certain knowledge of the occult to be able to read them. Because if you had 6 coins, let's say you have 6 coins on a card, how do you know what that means? It's just 6 coins. And then the symbology is really hard. Well, when Arthur Edward Waite employed for no money in a short period of time our dear Pamela Coleman Smith, who we now call Pixie. Hello, Pixie. She was really into theater and stage. And she said, yes, she'd do this for this pittance and create these 78 cards for him.
Such a feat.
Such a feat in a short period of time.
Yes.
So the major arcana, he was like, it has to be exactly what, like the Tarot de Marseille, the original tarot. And then she said, okay, well, what about the pips? They're called the pips. It's the minor arcana. Mm-hmm. Can I illustrate those? Don't care. Didn't care. Didn't care if it was scenic or not. Don't care, because all he wanted was the major arcana and get my project done.
Right.
Woman.
She's like, I'll show you.
By the way, person of color, she was from Jamaica.
Oh.
I know.
I didn't know. Did I not know that?
I don't know. She's really cool.
Yeah. I knew very much so that Pamela Coleman Smith has not received the credit that she deserves for the amount of work that she put into the Rider Waite deck. And
it's been called Rider Waite
forever.
And, Rider was just the publisher.
Yeah.
And Waite was the one that commissioned her to do the art. But the artist was Pixie.
Yeah. A couple of white men stealing credit from woman of color.
From a woman of color.
Artist who's amazing. And so unfortunate.
But we all credit her with making tarot able to be read intuitively.
Ah, love that.
So she is the birth mother of intuitive tarot, meaning you don't need the book. You don't need to be overwhelmed. You don't need the keywords. Why? Because she has created a theatrical little scene for you.
Love it.
To intuit.
Yeah.
It's all you need. You don't need to go any deeper than that. I always encourage everybody to learn the history of it and the foundations and the framework. I think it's important, and I think you can layer it into your readings over time.
Absolutely.
But never to make it unapproachable. Right. Go with intuition, because Pixie gave us this beautiful gift where she went ahead and illustrated. So instead of having 6 coins on a page, you now have a picture of a person, 3 people, 2 kneeling, 1 standing. The one standing is giving coins to one party and not to the other, and holding on to scales.
Oh, well, I think you could decipher that.
So just based on the image alone, you have so much to go on.
Yeah.
Why is the one character giving coins to one and not the other? Both characters beneath this one are begging.
Right.
Are they in the city? Are they outside of the city? What's going on? What are the balancing scales? What does that mean?
Yeah, was the justice there? Like,
what
who
is
deserves it?
Who deserves it?
Right.
But if I had just put 6 coins on a piece of cardstock,
idea.
you'd have no idea. And yet here she made this so accessible.
6 coins is better than 4 coins.
And it is.
Yeah. So.
And it is. Yeah.
Oh, that's so fascinating. And I love that Pamela Coleman Smith, intuitively or not, through designing the cards in this way and working on the pips, which she wasn't even 100% commissioned to do, has given permission for everybody to read intuitively. And I think that a lot of what you're doing and what you're saying right now is giving people permission to read the cards the way that their gut and their heart and their intuition is telling them to do that. We've mentioned rules multiple times in this episode, and I think that so much of paganism and divination and all these different avenues of practice are shrouded in these rules and like these ways you have to do it this way. There's no other way to do it. And to me, that sounds like structured religion.
It is.
Doesn't it? Like, it's just
It
like,
is.
you can't do things by intuition. You have to do it this way. And you can't give yourself your first tarot deck. It has to be given to you. And there's all these rules. And I think that what a lot of listeners and a lot of people who are looking for the practice and looking for the craft need is permission to say, hold on a second. Just because the rules are there doesn't mean that you have to follow those rules 100%. They can work as guidelines to help you get started. Yeah. But ultimately, that's just what they are. It's not rules in the traditional sense and the you do this, or if you don't do this, you're going to hell, right? It's not fear-based. It's just like, this is something to get you started. These are some, building blocks on this foundation. But ultimately, it's up to you to choose what rules work best for you and which ones don't, and listen to your intuition and listen to your gut. And that's what Pamela Coleman Smith intended with the cards.
Yeah.
Anyway.
It is. It's a beautiful thing. I mean, she made it so simple and so approachable, and I think broke down a lot of barriers. Yeah. Because nobody needed that gatekeeper to tell them what it means. It's like, if I look at that picture, I know. And I love, my tarot master that I worked with had said, he used the analogy of a fishbowl. Each image, each little work of art is in a fishbowl. And, the fish can swim around in the fishbowl, upside down, around, figure eight, jump up for a minute. But the fish has to come back down into the fishbowl to survive.
That's where it lives.
It lives there. So you just have to respect the fishbowl, the guidelines. So often I'll say, okay, so if you see let's just say the death card, because everybody freaks out about the death card. Okay. The fishbowl of the death card is an ending of some sort. Right. So let's not fantasize that the fish can live outside the fishbowl and it's, oh yeah, you're totally finding your lover today. It's going to be this is going to be the most amazing, most comfortable, wonderful thing in your life. Right. It's going to be sunny, successful. Yes, it's totally going to be successful. That's where we go wrong. Sure. And we can't get out of our own way because we want to see something that's not there. So just stay in the fishbowl. Something's ending. Yeah. Well, let's really be honest about it. Right. And that's it. That's it.
The end of one thing brings the beginning of something new. One door closes
and another opens, and there is a horizon. On the death card, there is a horizon.
Right.
There's lots of meaning to the death card. Sure. But just even the word death, I think we all understand what that means. It's an end. It can be a regenesis. It can be a transformation. Right. But there's also a period of grief that goes along with an end of some sort. So we just don't want to turn it into something other than what it is, because then we muck up the language a little bit. Right. That's why the symbolism that's sent to you is, the Grim Reaper. Right. On a horse with a black background. Right. Right. I mean, it's intense. It's an intense experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So I mean, to answer that question, do I have to start with a Rider Waite deck? I mean, no. If you find a deck that works well for you, and every artist has their own interpretation, they're putting different symbols within each card based on their own artistic perspective. But what I've found is that a lot of decks have similar symbolism regardless of the artist. And so for instance, the strength card has a woman and a lion on it. And I feel like that's something I see consistently across multiple different decks, or some kind of big cat creature or something, but you might also find decks that have that are very minimalist and don't have any pictures on them. And so I guess when I have customers come in looking for their first deck, I usually tend to lean towards something that has an essence of the Rider Waite imagery in it, just because it is something that is approachable. If you think of a lion, you think of loyal, you think of proud, you think of strong, you think of boastful, you think of these different images. And that to me is a simple way to make an intuitive interpretation of what that card is. I also have a couple books that I recommend that break down those symbols, the traditional Rider Waite, Pamela Coleman Smith symbols,
Yeah.
and tell you what each one means. And so I recommend that book to go along with it, just if you wanted to get an intuitive, like to start working on that intuitive perspectives. Some artists I find maybe weren't as in tune to that purposing
Right.
when they make their decks. And I mean, there's even decks out there that have nothing on them. There's like blank decks.
I know.
And
And they're selling them.
and they're selling them like hotcakes. And like maybe
Yeah.
I could see somebody who has like a really attuned third eye, or has like a lot of like third eye imagery that they're able to produce or visualize with the cards. Like somebody like that might work really, really well for that. But
Right.
for most people, I'm like, there's nothing to help you on this card. It is literally a white blank deck.
Yeah.
With numbers on it.
And the beauty of Pixie's art is the simplicity. And I think that's why it stood the test of time from 1909 until now, anyway.
Right.
Even the Tarot de Marseille, which that started in the 1400s
Sure.
in Italy. Clear, straightforward playing cards as we know them. Clear, straightforward. We understand what it is. And
Right.
her colors, the simplicity of the imagery, it makes it easier, to your point, for the symbolism to stand out at you.
Yeah.
So it's not as intimidating, and it's a little bit easier to read, even though the art, which can be more beautiful for somebody else, might be more intriguing to you.
Sure.
It depends on how in tune you are with your intuition.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you can go there, I mean, if you think about it, have you ever been to like art gallery, and then you hear somebody saying, oh, it's the existential expression of the chicken coming to life, but no, it was the egg. And
Right.
we roll our eyes and we're like, it looks like a red triangle on a white background.
Right.
Okay. It's the same kind of thing here. It's you couldn't come up with that same interpretation for the red triangle on the white background, and you're feeling lost and intimidated.
Yeah.
Because you didn't get the existential reference. And now
Right.
it's like, well, I don't know art, and I don't feel like I can do art.
Yeah.
Right?
Again, overwhelming.
Overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's really overwhelming. And yes, they can be beautiful, but most of the books that are out there, most of the videos online, courses are based on the Rider Waite Smith, because Pixie gave us the beauty of the simplicity. And if you can learn at that level, you can read any deck. And if you can learn the language of your intuition, that's the most important thing. You can read any deck.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what it is. It will still have the structure of tarot.
Yeah.
And then once you know the structure and you've got an intuitive channel, then the more complex or abstract or unique kind of decks become easier to read. What you don't want to do is overwhelm yourself from the get-go and
Right.
be like, well, I picked this because it was pretty, but I don't get it.
Right.
I don't get it.
Now, I want to talk a little bit too more about like the artists. And so a lot of artist tarot decks will come with a guidebook that their interpretation of the card might be a little bit off from what you might be used to.
Yeah.
Because they're putting their own artistic perspective on it. And I find that like, well, I guess I just kind of assume that if you're making a tarot deck, you know about tarot, you're intuitive, you read tarot, but that's not always the
true.
case. And so sometimes I feel like obligated to read it the way that the artist wants me to read it. And so if I read it and then I go check my book and I'm like, ooh, that's not exactly what this card said, then I feel like I did it wrong. Is there times when you can, like, so say I got the death card and I was like, well, in this perspective, I know that this card means XYZ, but that's not what I'm feeling right now. What I'm feeling is it means ABC. It's totally opposite. And then I check the book and I'm wrong both ways. Like, how do I, what part of that do I trust? Or what part of that do I read? And is it wrong is it insultful, or is it insulting to not be listening to what the artist wants me to know about their card?
To me, if an artist puts something out there for you to use as a divination tool, it's a gift that they gave your art and that you're connected to it in some way. But ultimately, no one has the right answer except you. So the only thing to trust is your own intuition in that moment. That's how you're going to build clarity in the language you speak with your own intuition.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. And that's why I said put the books down.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Yes, there are fish bowls.
Sure.
But quite frankly, look at the image and you can kind of get the fishbowl.
Yeah.
If you're like what you're talking about, if there's something that's really abstract or really far removed from the tradition of Rider Waite Smith, then I think it's just a matter of knowing yourself well enough to say, I'm going to use this as an oracle and not necessarily as a tarot deck, because there are a lot of artists out there who have been taking advantage of the profitability of creating a tarot deck. Or they want to do it for novelty. They're like, oh my gosh, it'd be so cool. I'm an artist and I want to do this.
Yeah.
And that's great. But then people try to force meaning into an image. Just let the image be what it is. Just say these are 78 art cards.
Yeah.
You can still read with them.
Yeah.
Every picture worth 1,000 words. Trust me, don't limit yourself to the keywords in the book.
Yeah.
And it's of no insult to someone. I mean, if they decided to do their own oracle deck, and that's the difference between tarot and oracle, right? I think that was one of the other questions.
Yeah, that is a question. Let's talk about that a little bit.
So tarot is an oracle, but not every oracle deck is a tarot.
It's like a square and a rectangle.
Yes.
I gotcha.
Tarot has a particular structure. In order for it to be tarot, you've got to have 5 suits. Somebody will say it was 4, but I call the trumps their own suit of spirit. Okay, so you've got to have the major arcana, and then the minor arcana is in 4 other suits: cups, swords, wands, and pentacles. And within those, they have numbers 1 through 10, so ace through 10, and then a court.
Right.
Page, knight, queen, king.
Yes.
Unless you have all of those elements, it is not a tarot deck. So if you take one of those elements out, let's say you don't have the pages or you don't have the major arcana, you have an oracle deck. There's absolutely nothing wrong with an oracle deck. It's the same conversation that you're having with your divine, but it's an oracle deck and not within the tarot structure. So you have to have all those elements. You have to have all 78 cards, and you have to have the structure of the 5 different suits. That's what makes it tarot.
Gotcha.
But when people start to get wild and they don't know the tarot and they just do images, it becomes an oracle deck. It still has value. And to your point, you can figure out what anything means looking at it. It just doesn't have the same structure. Lots of oracle decks will go all over the place with their structure. Some are for love.
Yeah.
Some are for shadow work. Some are just random motivational quotes, which also, some are flowers.
Yeah.
Some are nature. It's anything and everything. And then the validity of that deck and the usefulness of that deck really depends on your intuitive language.
Right.
And the situation that you're talking about. Whereas tarot, to me, given that framework, there's no question that can't be answered.
Right. Yeah, I just I find that with like oracle decks, I'm usually doing like 1 card draws, and just like, this is my question, what's your advice for me, or how's my day gonna go? Here's your advice for me. And I find that I while I love the artwork on oracle cards, because I do feel like it's not as structured, I don't find that I use them as often when I want to answer a heavy question. I find that I always go to tarot for that. Because I do feel like it's a more in-depth answer to my questions. Yeah. There's more to read about it.
Well, and there's more structure.
Yeah.
And that's the nice part about having a structure, is that you are guided with your messaging. So you kind of know where you're going. Oracle being more freeform. To your point, you said I can pull something for some advice, or you can pull it for like just kind of a last message from spirit, or what am I missing, or what was the essence of this? And that's when Oracle works really beautifully, especially just a oracle deck that's kind of a free form. I don't know how else to put it. There are oracle decks that are structured, such as Lenormand, which you and I have talked about quite a bit. Another fascinating woman.
Yeah. Yeah, tell us about Lenormand.
Lenormand.
So this is something like when I'm looking through my publisher book, I see cards that, they're selling Lenormand cards, and they remind me a little bit of the Tarot Marseille. Is that how you say it?
Tarot de Marseille.
Say it again.
Tarot de Marseille.
Tarot de Marseille. So it's Italian, right?
You're so Italian.
Yes, today, for right now. So I think that I see Lenormand next to Tarot de Marseille, and I think that like these are definitely older versions or alternative versions of divination cards, but they're not very mainstream to me. Like I don't, if I'm walking around, even walking around Salem, I went there for like a research and development trip, and everybody was selling tarot or palm readings or psychic readings, but nobody's selling Lenormand, at least, or if they are, because it's not on my radar, it's not something that I'm thinking about, I wasn't paying attention to that. But you've shown me Lenormand a couple times, and it is like, it's like one of my favorite forms of divination now. I just feel like it's very all-encompassing, again, very intuitive. It's it's awesome. So tell us a little bit about Lenormand. You also design Lenormand decks as well.
I do. And
in addition
actually, I
to the
kind of
tarot.
started my design work with Lenormand. And
Interesting.
I'll tell you the reason why.
Sure.
Remember how we were talking about tarot being scenic?
Yes.
There's like a whole little theater scene that you're looking at in each one of those things. Thank you, Pixie, for doing that. But also it's harder to recreate.
Sure.
if you're not an artist.
Yes.
Lenormand is one symbol per card.
A lot easier.
36 cards. And the symbols are very practical, very approachable. I almost want to say overt or obvious so that it's easy to pick up. So for instance, one of the symbols is a heart. It doesn't take a whole lot for us to sit here and say, well, what could a heart mean?
Right.
It means love. It means passion.
Yeah. Matters of the heart.
Matters of the heart of the matter.
Romance. Yeah.
It's important to me. It's exactly. That's all.
Yeah.
Next.
Easy. I know that there's like a dog is one of them.
A
dog is loyal. A dog is your friend.
It will assist you.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
easy.
It's very approachable in that way.
Right.
And it has a structure, which also makes it easier to read because, again, it's not anything like the snake. It has a snake. Okay, so we know what we think about a snake, right? I mean, we see one and we step back maybe a little.
Right.
We're concerned about whether or not it's poisonous and it's winding around and we're a little bit scared.
Sure.
Right? So those symbols make it very easy. Now, if I add the snake to the dog and I start speaking a language, I get a snake and a dog, what's going on?
Right.
Something's going on that's not right. So either the dog is helping me out and protecting me from the snake because the dog is really protective of me, right? And if we were in the wild, that's what would happen.
Right.
Or the dog might be a really loyal friend for me who's doing something a little complicated and treacherous. A little shady. A little shady. And if I saw my heart nearby, I'd be a little concerned.
Sure.
Right?
Well, yeah. I mean, we don't even have the cards in front of us, and I feel like I know what that reading means.
That's right. That's it. And that is the beauty of Lenormand. It's very straightforward. It's very practical. It's very down to earth. I think it, somebody once described the tarot as the pot that you're, the smoldering cauldron of everything,
Love
right?
it.
It's just this deep spiritual expression and archetypes and all this stuff. And then Lenormand put a lid on that pot. Done. Right? So it's real specific. You want to bring this to a boil real quick? Here.
Yeah.
This is what we're going to do. So it just caps everything off very clearly. So you can combine them very easily.
Sure.
You could use tarot. And sometimes, like, for instance, okay, so let's say the tarot, am I going to meet somebody? Yes, here comes a knight. Here comes your knight in shining armor, what everybody wants to hear, right? The Knight of Cups, that's beautiful. But, we don't know. In this day and age, we don't necessarily know what that means. That might be a more feminine energy than it is a masculine energy, and we're not exactly sure. So someone will always ask, oh my gosh, is that guy at work? Mm-hmm. Let me grab my Lenormand cards.
Yeah.
Let me show you how I'm going to combine these.
Yeah.
Let's describe this person.
Sure.
Right? So now we pull out some Lenormand cards and we get new symbolism.
And more.
And more. Okay, so it's, let's say we get the rider, which is a man riding in on a horse, another man riding in on a horse. And let's say that we get the bouquet of flowers.
Just a gift.
It's a gift. It's an offering, but it's also beautiful.
Mm.
So he's beautiful and athletic. Because we've got the rider, and a horse is real athletic, and he's coming your way, and it's someone new.
So not
The rider is an arrival. They rode in to tell you something.
Right.
We give you some news of an offer, which means you might be getting an invitation from a new person who's athletic and good looking.
So I love that you can take this seemingly mundane question or this yes/no question, this A/B question, right? And get this answer that's like, actually, let's look at it from a wider perspective. Let's widen that lens a little bit and say that this is what your options are coming up to you. I also noticed that we'll have customers come in and go, well, I'd like a tarot reading, but I don't know what I'd ask about. I don't know if I'd ask about work or love or what have you. And I see you reach for Lenormand first. Part of the structure of Lenormand is each deck has a man and a woman card, right? Or two people cards. And I find that, or what you've expressed to me is that the cards matter how they lay around that person, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it matters the heart lay closer to you. Maybe they're further away because maybe they're not as important as you're making them out to be. Or I find that, you can decipher whether or not like relationships are the major topic of interest, or work is the major topic of interest, or maybe a big endeavor that you're getting ready to work on is a big topic of interest.
Yeah.
So you can kind of like hone in. So you can have this broad perspective with Lenormand, but you can also have this very detailed, very, very close to you perspective with Lenormand. And it's pretty awesome.
It is.
I know you teach a class on Lenormand here at the shop also, and so for those of you listening, check our schedule, check our course guide, see when we have that coming up. If it doesn't work with your schedule, let us know. Perhaps we can do a one-on-one meeting with Lorraine, or either here at the shop or online. Yeah. So that's and same with tarot. And you have all these different classes here with us too. You've got Tarot 1, which is like a basics and fundamentals class. And then you have like a beyond class that teaches you more of the structure of the tarot deck itself. We also teaching tarot intuitively here, and so we have lots of different courses that we have going on in the shop with Lorene. You can either message us for, again, a Zoom class one-on-one, or meet in the shop for a class that way as well. I think I just want to finish up our conversation here with talking about a little bit about designing your own decks and what that's meant for you. You're incredibly creative, and I find that all your decks, you're just like you came in with your Christmas deck and you're like, I just whipped this together. And maybe there's some structure from like it's based off of your pixie deck, but so some of the structure is the same there, but you made it a little more whimsy, a little bit more fun. And but it just seems, where I think reading tarot is overwhelming, designing a deck seems like very, very overwhelming to me. So tell me a little bit about your process there and how you, as an artist, you work with the cards.
Yeah. Well, my, thank goodness, Pamela Coleman Smith Pixie made tarot pretty approachable for redesign. Basically, if you follow her outline, you know how you do paint by numbers, or you would draw like, an image on top of somebody else's image. You're like, I just got to get the outline down. She gives us the outline.
Sure.
And gives us the scene. So then it's a matter of repeating the scene. And I think there's nothing better than creating your own interpretation once you get to know your language more of those images. Starting with her I think was an easy, great way for me to start. And that's where I came up with Pixie's tarot and the Christmas tarot. Is I took her images and I blew them up. I'm like, ooh, let's make these bigger because she's awesome. And I'll just throw in a little zhuzh. And it's all good. It's the same thing. It's just a little pop of color. I'm like, oh, add some color to it. But there is something about the exploration of your own divination language and allowing it to come to fruition.
Sure.
Tarot is a lot more intensive to design because it's 78 works of art that you have to put together.
It's a lot.
Within a structure. Oracle deck is a little bit more free form. You can kind of put together anything that you want and call it anything that you want. So that's kind of a fun, creative outlet. A little thought to structure is really nice. And Lenormand is actually, I have tons of Lenormand decks for the sole reason that all I had to do was put a heart on a card. It's so easy. Here's a heart, here's an anchor, here's a dog, here's a fish. It's simple.
Sure.
Right? So it didn't require a lot of what I thought at the time, artistic talent.
Sure.
So starting with Lenormand was my easy way to get into how would I design something. I'm not an artist. I'm not a fine artist. I don't draw, I don't paint, I would argue. I have always thought of it as fine art, right?
Sure.
I called what I did digital scrapbooking.
Which is great.
Which it is.
It is a whole...
I had an artist tell me, you're mixed media. I'm like, okay, I'm mixed media, but let's call a spade a spade. And here's what it is. But here's what's beautiful about it. I don't know if you've heard of Canva, or if any of your listeners have heard of Canva. It's free. It's easy. Simple sign-in. You can set up your sizes and take images and just kind of dump them into the little page. And it's an easy way of doing digital scrapbooking, right? If you've got your pictures, you can just kind of move them over there and place them however you want. And suddenly it becomes approachable for anybody to be able to explore.
Sure.
And then you can kind of, feel into, what do I want that to look like? Or what does it mean to me to do that. But it's not unlike going to a bunch of magazines, cutting out the pictures and putting them together.
Oh, that sounds like a great practice of like learning your cards intuitively. I think that like even just doing that just for fun would be a good way to kind of learn the cards one by one. I just thought of like 20 different questions I want to ask you about tarot. But I think talking about learning the cards, I think we'll end on that note, because I know that ultimately people want to have that knowledge base when they're sitting down to read cards for people. They want to be fluent in their cards.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to talk about different ways that maybe we can learn to challenge ourselves, or to study the cards, and what kind of effort needs to go into that. Intuitively makes it feel like, I could just sit down and read the cards for anybody. And sometimes learning, again, the history of the cards or learning the background of the cards can be helpful in having a stronger base of intuition. So I want to share with you what I did when I first grabbed tarot cards, and when I first gravitated towards tarot cards. And it's a method that worked really well for me at the time. But the piece that was missing is that I wasn't aware that I could read intuitively. So when I first got tarot cards, I thought that I had to read it based off of what the card needed to say and what it needed to be. And so what I did is I went to the library, because I can't afford to buy every single book on tarot out there. So I grabbed the book that came with the deck that I bought, which is Tarot of the Sephiroth, which is really cool. It's very Kabbalah based.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it again since, and it's my favorite deck. It's just so good. And I won't lie that I bought it because I was really into Advent Children at the time, and there was a video game. It was a Final Fantasy video game, and they had a movie called Advent Children, and the bad guy's name is Sephiroth, and we were nerds and we were really into it. So I was like, that's fine, I'm going to get this deck.
That's right.
I've learned a lot more since then, but all the nerds on here will appreciate that. I went to the library and I pulled all the books on tarot off the shelf that I could. I didn't even check them out. I just sat in the back of the library and I just started at the very beginning at 0 at the Fool card, and I wrote down, I went through each book and I pulled through intuition. And didn't really realize that that's what I was doing, but through intuition, I pulled the definition that I thought fit this deck the most, or fit me the most. And I just pulled lines from every book. And I wrote them down in my own book. And I just said, okay, this is what I think the Fool means. And I had some positive ones and some negative ones, because it could be a mix. And I just filled out each page based off of what I pulled, and it wasn't everything from every book. It was just a line or two that made me feel like that's what this is for. And so I was dedicating myself to my practice by sitting down and writing this out. And it took me weeks. Like, I had to keep going back to the library to keep filling this out, but I learned a new card every day that I did it. And now when I read, if I use that book, I find that book works for every deck I use.
Oh, sure.
Because I picked those definitions intuitively, and it works awesome for me. And so I can really pick up any deck that I want and then read it. And I'll go through my book and I'll say, not that one, not that one, not that one.
Right.
It's this one or this one or this one. And then when I read for other people, they're like, yes, that's it. And so I don't read the whole definition when I go. I just like read it intuitively. And in some ways, I already know all of that, right? Like, so I could read without my book, but it's nice for the book to be there to reassure me in my readings. It's my crush. It's exactly that. It makes me feel better for sure. It's like a kid that scrapes its knee and doesn't really scrape it, but needs a Band-Aid on it anyway. That's why I have it with me.
But it's effective.
It is.
And that's the thing that we have to get away from, like the rules that you can't read if you have to have your nose.
Right.
You can, if you're still channeling, you still have intuition, and sometimes, we sit there for a while and it's not clear what's coming to us, and then we go, this jogs this train of thought for me that can help you out. So
and that helps you with your intuitive deciphering of what the cards say too. But that was really helpful because it was a mindfulness practice. I was sitting down, I was writing definitions. I didn't have flashcards per se, but I see some people do flashcards. I see apps for people who want to learn the cards. What do you think? Like, and how do you because my brain that likes structure, and my analytical side of my brain would say, I think it's this, but I'm second guessing myself and I want to double check.
Yeah.
So at what point, like, do you just trust yourself, or how do you study in a way that makes you feel fluent? What's the best method for that?
I think the best method, because you need to tune into your own intuitive channel, and not necessarily the crutch or the keywords or whatever.
Right.
And I love the way that you did it, because I do think we should all throw out the little white book and create our own.
Sure.
Which is, from experience, I'm going to jot this one down because it was important to me, and I'm going to jot this one down, which you'll gain over time. But I think one of the best ways to learn your own language is to pick up your deck. You have to read all the time, constantly be reading. But an easy way to do it, like I've never enjoyed the card of the day, because you're asking yourself to read the future, and very few of us are precog and know what's coming up in the future. Then we get in our own head, we don't know, and we freak out. Instead, read something on something you know, something in the past, and see how that card is trying to describe it to you. So you go, oh, I get it. You sent me the red hat. I know exactly what that means, right? So if I were asking something specific about, for instance, your daughter, what happened with Vivian at school yesterday that I was called in to address? Now pull a card. See how that card describes exactly what you were called into. You have to have a situation,
Sure.
right? But then you say, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
Now I know what Empress was.
Right.
I was there to be mom. I was there to nurture. I was there to protect. I was there to make sure that my daughter was taken care of and that she got the pillow when nobody else in the deck gets a pillow.
Right.
Right? So it could be, and you'll see how your intuition speaks, but that's the best way to do it, because now you
love that.
I know you're telling me, I already know the answer. So let me see how you describe the answer in an image to me.
Right.
Let's talk. Because if you're doing it on something you don't know, it could be anything.
Sure.
And then that's really hard.
Right. Well, that, like, I think that part of it, reading intuitively too, is like, to me, this card means blah, blah, blah. And then the other person can help decipher that. I do that when I get visualizations in Reiki. I'm like, I don't know, I saw a turtle. To me, a turtle means blah, blah, blah. And then they go, oh, that makes perfect sense. And also I have a turtle. You know, like, it's like, gotcha. Like, yeah. So it's like, but put it in your own personal story, your own personal, like, inflection on, like, what these cards mean to you personally. That's great to go back and do, like, this situation happened yesterday. I saw all these images. This to me is what an Empress card means. Like, I love that affiliation, because then your brain will remember it. It's like a mnemonic device in some way, where it's like, I hear it, I see it, I know how it associates to me. And then when I see this card, I know how it can associate to other people. Right. I think that's a great technique. Thank you.
It is. Another one that's good for learning the cards is to say, this is what I want. This is how I want to feel, or this is what I want to experience. Go look through 78 and pick out the one. So for instance, if you want to have a really prosperous business.
Sure. Which I do.
Which you do. Okay, so you want to have a really prosperous business, but it's more than that to you.
Yes, absolutely.
There are things that are important. There's community that's important. There's an aspect of spirituality that's important. There's other kinds of prosperity that are important. Now pick up the deck and go through and look at all of them.
Yeah.
And you might have to narrow it down.
Sure.
Because
there might be three.
There might be three. There might be a piece of the Empress. There might be a piece of the Nine of Coins for you. That's an independent business person. But there might also be a piece of the Ten of Cups, which is just fulfillment completely for the community. And then put those together. And now what you've done is a whole different ball of wax. Now you're doing manifestation. Right? So I'm intending this. This just became a talisman for what I want. Now when I go and I ask questions.
Yeah.
How do I get here?
Yeah.
What can I do? But you've gone in and you've also infused a meaning into those. I want to feel like this. So now when somebody comes to you and you're doing readings for them, and they're just like, oh, I want to know how my business is going to go. And you're like, ooh, I got the Empress, the 10 of Cups, and the 9 of Coins. I'm like, girl.
Yeah.
Woo, let me tell you, this is going to be fantastic, right?
Yeah.
Because you're starting to build a relationship with them that way as well.
Yeah, I love that. Well, you just gave me like 20 more questions that I want to ask too. I mean, we could, and if you guys are interested in having Lorene back on to talk about Lenormand or tarot or anything like that, please message, comment, find us online on our socials, or email us or send us a letter. And we would be happy to have Lorene back on. I'm already planning on it, so get ready for that. But yeah, I mean, we could talk about tarot spreads and reversals and it keeps going. So again, we have classes here too where Lorene can teach you personally But yeah, so that is basically our time. I'm sure we went over a little bit because, again, we could just talk forever. But yeah, thank you. Thank you for your knowledge. Thank you for your perspectives. I think tarot is a tool that people reach to. It's usually first on their list. Sure. And again, I want to reiterate that tarot is not something that has to be gifted to you. I feel like that is a gatekeeping practice that isn't necessary. Think of it as gifting it to yourself. And really trust your intuition when you're doing that. Pick, if you're between two decks, you got to really sit there and hold them. You got to hold them. You got to feel the energy and feel which one works best for you. And again, ask your ego. Put your ego cloak on the coat rack and say which one does the divine need me to have. And as you begin your collection, which inevitably it becomes a collection of tarot decks, whether it's for the art or for the way that it makes you feel, know that some decks are a little bit brighter and make you feel happy, positive things, and some decks are a little bit kick you in the ass. Like, they are tougher. I know my David Bowie deck in particular is very much like, get your together, and I read it that way, and it feels that way to me, and so usually I read them both together, so find that relationship with your tarot deck. Ask your tarot deck whether or not it wants to work with you or not, and ask if this is the right tool for you. Cleanse your tool, get to know your tool, and message if you have any questions. Just get in touch with us, and we're happy to share. This is what Ask a Witch is about, is you guys asking us questions and us trying our best to answer them, or learning together with you. So this has been a really great episode. Lorene, it's been wonderful having you on. Tell us a little bit about where people can find you on the socials. I know you're here at Blessed Be Reading occasionally. You do drop-in readings or appointment-based tarot readings here as well. But where can they find you on the socials? And tell us about your Etsy page too.
Yeah, I wish I were more social and that there would be something that you could see on there. I'm going to be real honest. I don't have a lot of energy for that.
This is becoming a theme. I think our shaman friend in the last episode, he also was not high on the social media aspect, and he's a software designer, but it's a necessary evil for us here, but it gets me in touch with all of you guys, which I love.
It's not that I don't love it. I just feel, in tarot terms, a bit more hermity.
That feels fair. That feels fair.
And then I have to be real respectful of how I express the energy when I express it. I'll get there. There will be more socials. But right now, the easiest is LoreneMusic.com.
Okay.
MUZIK.
Gotta be fancy.
I can't spell music the normal way anymore. It doesn't work.
Can't spell magic without a K.
Right? And then that gives me that will give you like all of the things. But to find me on Etsy, it's Divination Apothecary. Or divinationapothecary.com will actually take you to the Etsy store.
Perfect.
As well.
Awesome. I highly suggest getting on to divinationapothecary.com and checking out Lorene's decks, because they are fantastic. And I'll tell you from experience too, Lorene puts a lot into not only the artwork, but the quality of her product. She cares a lot about it, and does not make that much, makes an artist salary on her products. So I highly suggest looking into that and supporting her that way. Like I said, her decks are also on sale here at the shop. And then just getting in touch with us is another way that you can help support Lorene, and booking her classes is another way that you can help support her too. So yeah, that's awesome. Can't wait to talk to you some more until we meet again. And that has been Ask a Witch. I'm Bellamy Black, and I hope you have a nice day.
This has been Ask a Witch with Bellamy Black, a podcast fueled by the curiosity of listeners like you. We have a strong presence on the World Wide Web. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Ask a Witch Bellamy. Check out our live recordings on our YouTube channel at Ask a Witch Bellamy. Handles are listed in the show notes. For a chance to meet Bellamy in person, visit Blessed Be Tea and Apothecary in Traverse City, Michigan.